It's nice to meet you, Peter. And
Likewise.
I very much enjoyed the panel you moderated on risk culture. And out of the discussion you were having, I was thinking some questions were running through my mind about how innovative you feel the future of risk management might be, particularly as the regulatory framework seems to be becoming more and more rules oriented. Do you see the?
Yeah, I think I mean, it's been an interesting time to be in risk management. Obviously, before the global financial crisis, risk management rarely even got a mention within a lot of annual reports or investor briefings, and risk management was very much I think an immature profession which was work in progress. And since the GFC, we've really had a massive investment. People, resources, all the stakeholders are really interested to hear what's happening with risk management within every bank or financial institution. I think for us now as a profession, the onus is now really back on risk management to demonstrate that they're using the investment effectively, that they're actually delivering on, I guess, whether it was promises made early on in the global financial crisis or expectations which were raised as a result of shortcomings, and as I said, a lot of money's been invested. So I think the onus is back on risk management as a profession to demonstrate to organisations that it's getting good return on its investment. I think also not overly complicating processes, not duplicating processes. And I think one of the comments or questions of our panel about risk culture was, is it just the 3 layers of defence that you're relying upon? And to my mind, 3 layers of defence is a double-edged sword, because whilst it gives an organisation a lot of structure to think about how it's managing risks and who's responsible in the first line, which is the front line, which is the first line of defence. Risk management's the second line, and then auditors, internal or external, is the third line. To my mind, it's demonstrating that they're not tripping all over each other, that we are continuing to operate efficiently and effectively, because I think banking's a pretty tough business, very competitive margin-wise, obviously with increasing capital charges arising out of the regulatory response to the GFC, which everyone knows is Basel III. We've got to try and be as efficient as possible, keep very cost-effective structures, and I think risk management has to sort of basically help carry the can for an organisation. So for me, the innovation going forward is really how do you continue to effectively manage the risks in the portfolios that you have, to look out for emerging risks, and I think at the same time balance up the increasing regulatory and compliance burden with a realistic and practical approach of, look, we can't afford to spend unlimited amounts of money just because we say it's regulatory compliance reasons. We certainly as an industry need to comply with the regulatory requirements, but we've got to try and find ways to do it cheaper, more effectively, and really deliver the return to shareholders who are they've sort of gone a long time now with low returns on equity, and with additional capital imposts, it's going to be even more difficult. So I think the good thing about these sorts of forums for me is hearing what other banks are doing, what your peers are doing, trying to be innovative, try and manage risks responsibly, and do it in a cost-effective manner.
Yeah. Well, what happened in Europe or the West, basically, and the reaction of the Basel III, do you find that completely appropriate to the Asian market, and the global reaction, of course, on the regulatory front is very constraining?
I think this is a theme which has come through Risk Minds this year in Singapore. Is a number of the Asian bankers, and I guess being in Australia, I'll put myself in the Asia Pacific sort of category, is the question of, is the response appropriate given that the problems didn't really arise in our backyard? I think the pragmatic and practical approach is, the community, I think politicians right across the globe, have a higher set of expectations for banks now, and that includes, wanting safety and security. And if the response to that is to have more capital and more liquidity, then I think the banking industry just needs to accept that that's what it has to deal with. And as I said, just try and find ways to, I guess, mitigate or manage the adverse impact whilst at the same time getting on with business. Mm-hmm. So I think, I won't speak for the Australian banking sector per se, but we've got a very strong regulator in Australia through APRA. And APRA's been working very closely with all the banking participants in Australia to come up with a response that I think is socially responsible, and yet at the same time, meets the expectations globally of central banks.
What keeps you up late at night as a risk manager?
Everyone always asks me what risks you're worrying about that you don't know about, and I usually say most of the risks that you need to worry about you already know. In the case of the bank that I work for, Bank of Queensland, we've got a retail bank, a commercial bank, which has got a number of segments: agribusiness, property finance, and most of the risks which we need to worry about, we know about. It's really a matter of just making sure through risk appetite setting processes, through business planning and business strategy sessions, that we don't make mistakes in terms of bad business decisions. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, I think, particularly if you've got a very experienced group of bankers or management team who've been through a few cycles, it's actually quite easy to predict where you'll go wrong. When it will happen is a little bit harder to predict, but I don't think there's anything that we talk about in our management discussions or even at the Risk Minds event this year. There's no new or emerging risks. It's pretty well just trying to manage and understand what's emerging from a known category of risks.